Today on Mercedes Garage, we're going to be talking about the inline Mercedes-Benz 4-cylinder diesel engines of Mercedes-Benz. Ah, that familiar sound of the Mercedes diesel engine. I grew up with that sound. Today in this video series we're going to be talking about Mercedes diesel engines. As it said, because I need a 30-second fill-in, about diesel engines will be explained throughout the video, and also too we'll be talking about gasoline engines on a later video. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Mercedes Garage. Studio audience. Today we're going to be talking about the Mercedes-Benz inline 4-cylinder diesel engine. But first, a little background on how a diesel engine works. A diesel engine works by compression, so your compression is important to have the right amount of compression, which depends on the engine, it varies, but it's generally over 200 psi per cylinder to have enough compression to ignite the diesel. Because diesel does not ignite by spark alone, it ignites with spark and compression. So the second important thing is to have enough heat, which is accomplished by your glow plugs. So this is the two main differences versus a regular gasoline engine and a diesel engine. As you can see, the diagram, this illustration that's on the screen right now, the piston is in the downward motion that allows the air the intake of the air. Then the compression, which we explained a few seconds ago, which is very important to have enough compression in that combustion chamber to ignite the diesel. The fuel injection or fuel injector allows the fuel to go in, which then, with the heat from the glow plugs preheating before, the combustion chamber is hot enough, so then you have perpetual motion of the fuel. You have the ignition, you have the intake, the compression, and then the explosion, the combustion, the power, the ignition. And then that forces the piston down, which then you have the exhaust. And back up. The power pushes the piston down, the exhaust, then the piston goes back up for the exhaust. So this all happens within a matter of hundredths of a second. And there's two other important differences with a diesel engine, is also having a large enough battery, because batteries on a diesel engine are bigger, and the starter motor is more heavier duty to be able to crank the engine to turn over. So now we're going to talk about the engines, the 4-cylinder engines of Mercedes-Benz. Now, we're going to show you some screen images, videos. This would work. of Wikipedia, which is basically the only source for this information that I could find. Please comment below if you know any other sources for this, but this is the only information that I found online with Mercedes engines. Now, the first engine that Mercedes made was the OM 138. This was made in 1935 to 1940 and was the first Mercedes-Benz diesel engine. As you could read the captions, and I'll have links to this web page eventually. It was also used in trucks, light-duty trucks, the L1100 and the L1500, which I am not sure who made that. It may be made by Daimler. But this was Mercedes was the first car passenger car with a diesel engine, and it all started with the OM 138. Then was replaced by the OM 636 engine, which was in production from 1948 to 1990, but not in passenger cars as much as it was in the U-Mogs, which was a truck, basically. Oh, and one other important thing, OM is an engine designation that just means oil motor. That's what, versus M for gasoline engines, which means gas motor. Okay, so that's a little important to, before we go any further, to know that OM means oil motor and it means diesel engine. And this is a little bit more about the OM 636. Now you may be saying, why isn't this in order? I don't know why. For whatever reason, Mercedes did not put these numbers of their engines in order. They're all over the place. And it goes into the technical side of it, and I'm not going to bore people with that. It does have an inline mechanical diesel fuel injection pump, which was designed by Bosch, which still was used for the later models. The next one is this OM 621 engine that was produced from 1956 to 1968, and that would be your pontoon models had that engine in it. What are the models? I'm trying to read this. The 120, W121, W120, the W110, and the W110 and the U-Mog 421 all had that same engine. Again, we're only 47 to 54 horsepower, so not exactly a lot of horsepower, but it is a 4-cylinder diesel engine. We'll go to the, as you can see this on the screen now, some more particulars about this engine. Should be going to the next motor, which should be the 615. The 615, here's a picture of the 615 engine. It's not very clear. And here is the 615 was the workhorse motor for Mercedes. It was used in the 115 body style and early 123 body style. In the 200D and the 220D, both models that were not sold in the US. It was also used in the N1300 and the MB100, which were vans. It should show that coming up. Used in vans, as you can see, the N1300 and the MB100. as well as the W114 and the W115 passenger sedan, and also the 123 in earlier 123s, but it was actually used in the 200D. The 200D was never sold in the US, as I said before. I don't know when the phone rings. So now we're going to talk about the engine that I know the best, is the 616. And here's a picture detailing the 616. And here's a picture in my 240D of a 616 engine and the layout that they went to with that engine. This is a non-turbocharged engine. As you can see on the lower side here is the fuel injection pump, the fuel filter, the valve cover in the engine is here, and the air filter. Here's another picture of the side of the transmission. This is with an automatic transmission. The valve and the fuel injection pump was still a mechanical fuel injection pump, which they went until early 1998 or 99 with a mechanical fuel injection pump. And believe it or not, the 616 engine is still in production to this day. It was produced from 1973 to the present. It's made by Force Motors under license of Benz in India for the Force Motor vehicles, but it's not sold. None of those are sold in America at all. So again, early 616 engines, the 616 9.16 was used in the 115 engine body, as well as the TN van and the G-Class. GD 240 was using the 616 engine. The power, it's about 67 horsepower. 0 to 60 in about 45 minutes. It's not that bad, but it seems like it's that bad. But it's an engine that will last you well over 1 million miles. It's probably the best engine Mercedes ever made. The 616 and the 617. Those two are probably the best engines that any auto manufacturer ever made. If you change the oil regularly in it, it will last you forever. Like I said, here it is on the bottom that they are still making them, but it's made in India for this Force Motors company, which they make small multi-utilitarian vehicles and buses, that kind of stuff. It's a 4-stroke diesel engine, as we said before, 2399 cc, so it's not exactly a very powerful engine. It's basically an engine that you just let it go and it'll go forever. The next one, OM601, was in the 190s. That went from 1983 to 2000. It's again still a 4-cylinder, inline 4-cylinder engine, non-turbo. And it was used in the 190D, the W201 190D. Excuse me. That engine was not bad. It had, I'm not sure what the problems were with that. I'm not that familiar with that model. But it's again, you're not doing bad. If you have a Mercedes diesel, you're okay. The next one is the OM604. 4 engine, 4-cylinder, which went from 1993 to 1998. Now remember why these times are getting shorter in the productivity of it is because of increased environmental regulations and anti-diesel people out there. It's just not. Now this engine was not really used, as I'm reading this on my screen, this was used in Korea for Sanjal Young Company. It was not used in any vehicles in the US or in Europe. Now this OM668 engine was used in the W168 and the W414 from 1997 to 2004, and that was an A-class. So this engine is still in production to this day. It says production 1997 to the present. So this is now a turbocharged, and it comes in various varieties too. You could go mad with the different varieties of Mercedes engines. It's also used in an aircraft too. The Citation 1.7 aircraft engine uses that too. It sounds like it's a prop plane, obviously. The next engine is the OM611. This was made from 1998 to 2011, and it was used mainly in Sprinters and the E-Class. The W211 used this engine, the W202 used it, and the W210 used it for model year 1999. I think it should be a turbocharged. It doesn't say. Well, they later on made pretty much all of them turbocharged engines, even the 4 cylinders. As you can see, here's the pictures of which models these were in at the time of production. And we'll just wait for this to... It was also in the Sprinter, which was the Dodge Freightliner. Mercedes, that's when Mercedes owned Dodge. It was also in the... We did that one already. Talking to my... And it was also in the W203 C-Class. And those are all the same. So we'll go back to the next engine, is the OM646, which that was used from 2002 to 2010. Another little thing is they changed the engines probably in the early 2000s to a CDI, Common Direct Ignition, or Common Rail. It's a different way of injecting. The injection pressure got much higher than on a 120. Okay, this is in the 211, 203, W203, W639, which is not sold in North America, in the US anyway. The C-Class, W203, when they made a diesel version of it. And funny, the Chrysler PT Cruiser in diesel, which never was seen in America. Maybe in Canada, but not in the U.S. The C1209, which is a CLK diesel, which never was sold in the U.S. Now, some of these, as you're seeing, were sold here, and some of them were not sold here. So, when I say sold here, I mean the U.S. So, comment below if these if you know any of these or if you have one of these. Also, it's in the W204 C220C DI. And we'll just wait for this to go to the next screen. As you could tell, I filmed the screen capture at a different time as this video. So I'm sorry, please bear with the slight delay. The OM640 engine was basically an aircraft engine used in the Theart Citation 2.0. So we're not going to talk about aircraft engines because that's totally different. The OM651, still again a 4-cylinder, which this whole video is about 4-cylinder. This is a turbocharged, single turbo or twin turbo, or what they call bi-turbo, BI turbo, which just increases the power of the engine. We're now up to 201 horsepower with the bi-turbo on a 4-cylinder diesel, which is pretty good. Now we have the OM654 engine, which I think this is still in production, 2016 to the present, and it's in a lot of cars. The W177, the W247, the W240, the C118, C257, CW205, and various models, as you can see on the screen, and the pictures of each car as I'm going through that. Let's see if it goes down. I was also in the W213. It was in the H247. So this is pretty much a very common engine, but again, not available in the US. So those in Europe or in other countries, you're lucky to get one of these cars which has a diesel engine, because as far as I know, which I could do a quick check on Mercedes' website in the US, these models are available here but without a diesel engine. You could get a C-Class GLC and a GLB, GLA, but they've never made one with a diesel engine. And now we'll go back to the rest of the 4-cylinder diesel engines. We have another one by Sanyang, which is, that's a specialty, that's an outsourced engine. We're not going to talk about that because that's really not in a Mercedes. Let's see which one this is. This is an OM604 engine, which this is in a few other, it's also in the Sanyang, which looks like a Mercedes, by the way, but it's not a Mercedes. It's just Mercedes is making the engine for this company, which Mercedes does do that for several companies. It's not just that one in particular. The OM699 is made for Nissan and Renault, so we're not going to really talk about that one either. And that this OM607 is also made for Renault's. OM608, you see the numbers are all over the place, is still in production, and it's not made by Mercedes, it's made by Renault, but it's in a Mercedes because it's in the W177 A-Class. which that car is available in the US, but not the engine. So it gets a little confusing, as you could see, with Mercedes engines. Next time we'll talk about the inline 5-cylinder engines, diesel, and we'll talk about the diesel engines. I think there's a 6-cylinder diesel, but which they'll be in future videos. This is part 1 of Mercedes engines, and we started it off with inline 4-cylinder diesels. Next time we'll talk about the, like I said, the 5-cylinder and the 6-cylinder, and then we'll talk about gasoline engines starting at 4 cylinders and then 6-cylinder and then V6s, which there's a few. Well, there's more than a few. They went back to an inline 6. We're talking about gasoline. And then we'll talk about V8s and V12s. So this concludes part 1 of Mercedes engine talk on Mercedes Garage. We'll talk to you again next time when we have another episode of Mercedes Garage. And thank you for the 24 subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. We could use some more. Hit the thumbs up if you liked the video, and please comment, please like and subscribe, and share.